The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I watched my wife Talia work the room like a politician during election season. She moved between clusters of corporate executives with practiced grace, her burgundy dress catching the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead. The company Christmas party was in full swing at the Riverside Country Club, and everyone who mattered in our small Maine town was here. I'm Dean Callix, and I've spent the last 15 years building the technical infrastructure that keeps Northpoint Industries running. While others schmoozed and played golf, I was in server rooms and conference calls, making sure our systems never failed. Not glamorous work, but essential. At least, that's what I told myself. Dean! The booming voice belonged to Rhett Vossin, our CEO. He approached with his usual swagger, flanked by two board members I recognized but rarely spoke with. Rhett was everything I wasn't, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from old money and newer arrogance. There's our tech wizard. How's the equipment holding up? Everything's running smoothly, I replied, taking a sip of champagne. The new server farm should be operational by February. Rhett's eyes swept over my navy suit, a decent one I'd bought at Macy's last year. His expression shifted slightly, and I caught the subtle smirk before he spoke. Dean, I've been meaning to ask, are you having financial troubles? The question hit me like a slap. The conversations around us seemed to quiet, though that might have been my imagination. Excuse me? Your suit, Rhett continued, his voice carrying just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. It looks, well, should I give you some money? It really does look quite cheap. The laughter started with the board members, then spread to others who had drifted closer to listen. I felt heat rise in my neck as more people turned our way. Across the room, I saw Talia glance over, her expression unreadable for just a moment before she joined the polite laughter. My wife was laughing at me. That's very generous of you, Rhett, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, but I think I'll manage. More chuckles rippled through the crowd. Someone made a comment about IT budgets that earned another round of laughter. I stood there, champagne in hand, feeling like a specimen under a microscope. The worst part wasn't the humiliation. It was watching Talia's face as she smiled and shook her head, playing along with the joke at my expense. Well, if you change your mind, Rhett said, patting my shoulder with mock sympathy, we take care of our people here at Northpoint. The group began to disperse, moving on to other conversations and other victims. I remained where I was, processing what had just happened. 15 years of loyalty, of 60-hour weeks and emergency calls at midnight, and this was how they saw me, as someone to be pitied and mocked. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Soren Valden, our CFO and the only person in this company I truly trusted. Need to talk. Tonight. Important. His response came within seconds. Everything okay? Will be soon, I typed back. I decided I needed some air and headed toward the hallway that led to the restrooms. The corridor was quieter, lined with oil paintings of the club's founding members. I was almost to the men's room when I heard familiar voices coming from an alcove near the coat check. Can't keep doing this here, Talia was saying, her voice lower than usual. Nobody's paying attention, came Rhett's reply. They're all too busy with their drinks and gossip. I stopped walking. Something in their tone made me step closer to the wall, staying out of sight. Still, Talia said, Dean might notice. Dean? Rhett laughed, the same condescending laugh from earlier. Your husband wouldn't notice if we took out a billboard. He's too busy playing with his computers. I heard the sound of movement, fabric rustling. When I risked a glance around the corner, I saw them standing close together, Talia's hand on Rhett's chest. Not kissing, but intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. I should get back, Talia said, but she didn't move away. Soon, Rhett replied. I have something for you. Consider it an early Christmas bonus. They separated then, Talia smoothing her dress and checking her reflection in the mirror mounted on the alcove wall. Rhett adjusted his tie and headed back toward the main party. I waited until they were both gone before emerging from my hiding spot. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone again. This time, I typed a longer message to Soren. Initiate the transfer, tonight. All dormant shares. Move everything we discussed. Soren's response took longer this time. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I thought about Rhett's smirk, about the laughter, about my wife's hand on his chest, about 15 years of being treated like hired help while building the backbone of their company. I'm sure, I typed. Time to remind them who really runs this place. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and returned to the party. Talia was back in her element, charming a group of investors' wives with some story about our recent vacation to Bar Harbor. She caught my eye and smiled, the same smile she'd given me that morning over coffee, the same smile she'd worn while laughing at Rhett's joke about my suit. I smiled back and raised my champagne flute in a small salute. She looked pleased, probably thinking I was being a good sport about the earlier embarrassment. If she only knew what was coming. I woke up at 5:30, same as always. Talia was still asleep beside me, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Our bedroom was all clean lines and expensive furniture, her choices naturally. Everything in our house reflected her taste, from the marble countertops to the abstract art that probably cost more than most people's cars. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Soren, all from after midnight. Good. That meant the transfers had gone through. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to my study, the one room in the house that was truly mine. The door had a lock, something Talia had questioned when we moved in 5 years ago, but I'd insisted. Sensitive company files, I'd explained. She'd accepted that explanation then. Now I was grateful for the privacy. My computer was already humming when I sat down. Soren had been busy. The share transfer documents were complete, filed with the state, and legally binding. What had taken us months to plan had been executed in a few hours. I now controlled 51% of Northpoint Industries. Talia's phone was buzzing on the nightstand when I returned upstairs. She was still asleep, so I glanced at the screen. A text from R with a heart emoji. Last night was perfect. Can't wait for our lunch meeting today. I set the phone back down carefully and headed for the shower. By the time I emerged, Talia was awake and checking her messages. She looked up at me with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Morning, honey. You left early last night. Everything okay? Just tired, I said, selecting a shirt from my closet. Long week. Well, you missed a great conversation with the Hendersons about their trip to Europe, and Rhett Vossin was asking about you. Rhett's wife? She thinks you're underappreciated at the company. Her words, not mine. Talia was applying lipstick now, getting ready for another day of managing Northpoint's public relations. She said Rhett should give you more recognition. I almost laughed. That's thoughtful of her. I defended you, of course. Told her you prefer working behind the scenes. Of course you did. She missed the edge in my voice, too focused on her morning routine. Talia had always been good at managing narratives, spinning stories to fit whatever outcome she desired. It's what made her excellent at her job and dangerous as a wife. I have meetings all day, she said, grabbing her purse and coffee mug. Don't wait up if I'm late. End of year planning, you know how it is. Sure, I said. I know exactly how it is. She kissed my cheek and was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and lingering lies. I waited 10 minutes, then called Soren. Dean, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I saw your calls. Everything went through? Everything. But we have a problem. Talia tried to access your dormant accounts last week. She had authorization papers, claimed you'd asked her to consolidate some investments. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of papers? Forged, obviously, but good forgeries. If I hadn't been suspicious, they might have worked. She was trying to transfer your shares into a joint account she controls. So she'd been planning her own move. Interesting. There's more, Soren continued. She's been feeding information to Rhett about your projects. Technical specifications, budget allocations, timeline reports, stuff that should be confidential. How do you know? Because some of the information was wrong. I've been giving her false reports for the past month, just to see what would happen. Sure enough, Rhett started making decisions based on bad data. I had to hand it to Soren. He was always 3 steps ahead. What kind of decisions? He's been shorting our own stock, betting against the company's success. Apparently, he thinks we're about to have major technical failures that will crater our share price. Technical failures that aren't going to happen. Exactly. He's about to lose a lot of money, and it's going to look very suspicious to the board. I leaned back in my chair, pieces falling into place. How long until he realizes he's been played? Market opens in 2 hours. He'll figure it out by lunch. Perfect. That gives us time for phase 2. Which is? Talia is about to discover that her company access has been revoked. All of it. Email, building security, expense accounts, everything. Dean, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no stopping. I thought about last night, about the laughter and the secret meeting in the alcove, about years of being treated like furniture while my wife and her boss made plans behind my back. I'm sure. Make the calls. After hanging up with Soren, I drove to Maddie's bar, the only place in town where people talked more than they drank. My sister Maddie had owned the place for 10 years, and in that time, she'd become the unofficial keeper of every secret in our small Maine community. Well, she said when I walked in, if it isn't the man of the hour. The bar was nearly empty at 9 in the morning, just a few regulars nursing coffee and hangovers. Maddie poured me a cup without asking. What do you mean, man of the hour? The Christmas party, Dean. Everyone's talking about it. Rhett's little performance, your wife's reaction. Hell, half the town probably heard about it by midnight. What exactly are they saying? Maddie leaned against the bar, her expression serious. They're saying Rhett humiliated you in front of everyone, and Talia just stood there and laughed. They're also saying it's not the first time. What else? You really want to know? I nodded. They're saying your wife's been awfully cozy with the boss lately. Lots of private meetings, long lunches, weekend calls. People notice these things, Dean, especially in a town this size. How long has this been going on? Months, maybe longer. Look, I love you, but you've been blind to what everyone else can see. Talia's ambitious, always has been. And Rhett's got what she wants. Power, money, connections. I sipped my coffee, processing this. Anyone else know? About the affair? It's still mostly whispers and speculation, but after last night, people are starting to connect the dots. Won't be whispers much longer. My phone buzzed with a text from Soren. It's done. She's locked out of everything. Thanks, Maddie. I owe you. Just be careful, Dean. When cornered animals get desperate, they do stupid things. I was halfway home when my phone rang. Talia's name appeared on the screen. Dean, something's wrong with my access at work. My badge isn't working, my computer won't log in. Can you call IT and see what's happening? That's strange, I said. Have you tried calling them yourself? Of course I have. They're saying there's some kind of security review, but nobody will tell me what that means. This is ridiculous. I'm sure it's just a glitch. These things happen. A glitch? Dean, I can't do my job if I can't access my files. I have a presentation this afternoon for the board. Maybe you should talk to Rhett about it. There was a pause. Why would you say that? He's the CEO. If anyone can sort this out, it's him. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll call you back. The connection ended. I smiled as I pulled into our driveway. Phase 2 was officially underway. The Northpoint Industries headquarters was a glass and steel monument to corporate ambition, rising 12 stories above our small main town like a middle finger pointed at the sky. I'd helped design the building's technical infrastructure, every server room and fiber optic cable. Now I was about to use that knowledge in ways the architects never intended. I arrived at the office early, as usual. The security guard nodded as I badged in. My access, unlike my wife's, was working perfectly. I took the elevator to the executive floor, where the real power resided behind mahogany doors and floor-to-ceiling windows. Soren was waiting in my office with coffee and a stack of documents. "The board meeting's set for 10, he said. "I've called it as an emergency session to discuss urgent ownership changes. They'll all be there." "Including Rhett?" "Especially Rhett. He's been trying to reach me all morning about his stock positions. Apparently he's down about 2 million since the market opened." "And Talia?" "Still locked out. She's been calling everyone she knows, trying to get someone to override the security protocols. Nobody wants to cross IT without proper authorization." I reviewed the documents Soren had prepared. Share transfer certificates, board resolutions, corporate bylaws, everything we needed to make this official and irreversible. "Any second thoughts?" Soren asked. "None." At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked into the boardroom. The long table was surrounded by 12 of the most powerful people in our town: bank presidents, real estate developers, the mayor's wife who chaired the hospital board. These were the people who decided which restaurants succeeded, which charities got funding, which families were invited to the right parties. They were also the people who had laughed at me last night. Rhett sat at the head of the table, looking haggard. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes. He'd clearly had a rough morning watching his investments evaporate. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," I began, standing at the opposite end of the table. "I have some important announcements regarding the ownership structure of Northpoint Industries." Margaret Henderson, the bank president's wife, looked confused. "Dean, shouldn't Rhett be running this meeting?" "Actually, no. As of midnight last night, I became the majority shareholder of this company, 51% to be precise." The silence that followed was deafening. Rhett's face went white, then red, then white again. "That's impossible," he said. "Those shares were dormant, unclaimed." "Dormant, yes. Unclaimed, no. I've been accumulating them for years through various investment vehicles, all legal, all properly documented. Soren has the paperwork if anyone wants to review it." Thomas Brennan, who owned half the commercial real estate in town, leaned forward. "What does this mean for current management?" "It means there are going to be some changes, starting with a comprehensive audit of all executive activities, particularly those involving conflicts of interest or misuse of company resources." Rhett stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You can't just waltz in here and—" "I can, actually. That's what majority ownership means." I opened the folder in front of me and pulled out a photograph. For instance, this picture shows a company credit card being used at the Riverside Inn last Tuesday afternoon. The same afternoon, my wife Talia reported being in meetings with potential clients. I placed the photo on the table where everyone could see it. It showed Rhett's distinctive silver BMW in the inn's parking lot, with a timestamp clearly visible. "The interesting thing about the Riverside Inn," I continued, "is that they don't host business meetings. They're known for other services, hourly rates, discreet entrances, that sort of thing." Margaret Henderson gasped. Others began whispering among themselves. Rhett's face was now completely red. "You're implying—" "I'm not implying anything, I'm stating facts. Company resources were used for personal activities that violate both our ethics policy and your employment contract." The boardroom door opened, and Talia walked in. She looked frantic, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the tense atmosphere and the photo on the table. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "Why wasn't I notified about this meeting?" "Because you no longer work here," I said calmly. "Your employment was terminated this morning for violations of company policy." You can't fire me. I'm head of public relations. Actually, as majority owner, I can fire anyone I choose, including the CEO. Rhett slumped back into his chair. Dean, let's discuss this privately. I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we're well past private discussions. This is about transparency now, about making sure everyone understands how business has really been conducted around here. I pulled out another document. For example, this expense report shows 17 client dinners at restaurants that were closed on the dates in question. And here's a travel voucher for a business trip to Portland that coincidentally matched my wife's personal vacation schedule. Talia's face was pale now. She looked at Rhett, then back at me, finally understanding the scope of what was happening. The good news, I continued, is that we're going to clean house. New management, new policies, new standards of accountability. The bad news, for some people, is that their services are no longer required. This is insane, Talia said. You can't destroy people's careers over some paranoid fantasy. Fantasy? I pulled out my phone and played a brief audio recording. Talia's voice was clearly audible. Dean wouldn't notice if we took out a billboard. He's too busy playing with his computers. The recording was from last night, captured when I'd gotten close enough to their alcove conversation. Not everything they'd said, but enough to make the point. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Board members were looking at each other, at Rhett, at Talia, trying to process what they were hearing. I think we've heard enough, said Thomas Brennan, all in favor of accepting the new ownership structure and supporting the proposed management changes. Hands went up around the table. Not all of them, but enough. Rhett sat motionless, staring at the table. Talia looked like she might collapse. Motion carried, Brennan announced. Dean, congratulations on your new role as majority owner and CEO of Northpoint Industries. The meeting ended with handshakes and cautious congratulations. People filed out slowly, already planning how they'd share this story with their spouses and friends. By evening, everyone in town would know what had happened. Rhett approached me as the room emptied. This isn't over, Dean. You think you're clever, but you have no idea what you've started. Actually, I know exactly what I've started. I'm finishing it. Talia was waiting by my car when I reached the parking garage. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She was angry. How long have you been planning this? Long enough. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, your affair? She flinched. It wasn't like that. No? Then what was it like? Enlighten me. It was complicated. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations. Rhett offered opportunities, advancement. He offered you a way to use me while you figured out your next move. The forged documents to access my accounts were a nice touch, by the way. Her face went completely white. How did you... I know everything, Talia. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She straightened, some of her composure returning. I'm going to fight this. You can't just ruin people's lives because your feelings are hurt. Watch me. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking garage. In my rearview mirror, I could see her pulling out her phone, probably calling someone for help. Good luck with that. After today's performance, most people would be keeping their distance. Phase 3 was about to begin. The warehouse district sat on the outskirts of town, a collection of aging industrial buildings that had seen better decades. Most were empty now, victims of economic shifts and corporate relocations. It was the perfect place for a private conversation, which is why I wasn't surprised when Rhett suggested we meet there. His text had come that afternoon. We need to talk. Warehouse 7, Industrial Drive. Come alone. I showed up 30 minutes early, not because I was eager, but because preparation had become my religion. Soren was positioned across the street in his car, and 3 of Maddie's regulars, guys who'd worked construction before the economy tanked, were waiting in the building next door. Sometimes paranoia and planning looked exactly the same. Rhett arrived precisely on time, But he wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits flanked him as he walked through the warehouse entrance. They looked like the kind of people who solved problems with their hands rather than their words. "Dean!" Rhett called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it, though I notice you brought friends. Insurance, you've been making some pretty serious accusations." "I've been stating facts. There's a difference." The larger of Rhett's companions stepped forward. He had the build of someone who'd spent time in places where violence was currency. "Mr. Vossin wants to make you an offer." "I'm listening." Rhett walked closer, his footsteps loud on the concrete floor. "This doesn't have to get ugly, Dean. You've made your point. You're angry. I get it. But destroying the company hurts everyone. Employees, shareholders, the whole town. I'm not destroying anything. I'm cleaning it up. By ruining people's lives? By spreading gossip and innuendo? By exposing the truth. Something this town hasn't seen much of lately." The second man moved to my left, creating a triangle formation. Basic intimidation tactics, probably effective on most people. Unfortunately for them, I'd spent months preparing for this moment. "Here's what's going to happen," Rhett continued. "You're going to reverse the share transfers, reinstate the management structure, and we're all going to pretend this little tantrum never happened. In exchange, I'll make sure you get a generous severance package and positive references for your next job. And if I refuse, then things get complicated. Accidents happen, Dean. Equipment failures, system crashes, personal tragedies. You understand." I pulled out my phone and checked the time. "Actually, I think you're the one who doesn't understand." The warehouse doors opened, and Soren walked in with Tommy Brennan, Mike Sullivan, and Jack Morrison, Maddie's regulars, all of whom had reasons to dislike entitled rich guys who threatened working people. They spread out behind Rhett's men, evening the odds considerably. "You see," I continued, "I've learned a lot about preparation lately, about thinking 3 steps ahead, about having insurance." Rhett's confidence wavered. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave town, tonight. Pack your things, close your accounts, and disappear. If you're not gone by morning, I release the rest of the evidence I've collected." "What evidence?" I pulled out a tablet and showed him the screen. It displayed a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and transaction details. "Turns out, when you give someone access to your computer systems, they can see everything. Every personal email sent on company time, every expense report, every questionable transaction. 3 years' worth of material that would make very interesting reading for the state attorney general." Rhett's face went gray. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Should we call his office and find out?" One of his companions whispered something in his ear. Rhett nodded reluctantly. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is. Tommy, would you mind escorting these gentlemen to their car?" The construction workers were happy to oblige. As they walked away, I could hear Rhett arguing with his hired help about payment and expectations. Apparently, they hadn't signed up for facing down half the local workforce. "That went well," Soren said once we were alone. "Better than expected. Think he'll actually leave?" "Tonight? Probably not, but soon. He's got too much to lose by staying." We locked up the warehouse and headed back to town. I had one more stop to make before going home. Talia's car was in the driveway when I pulled up, but the house felt different somehow. Colder. I found her in my study, sitting at my desk with my computer open. "Find anything interesting?" I asked. She spun around, startled. "I was looking for financial documents. I have a right to know what you've done with our assets." "Our assets? Interesting choice of words." She stood up, defiant. "I'm still your wife, Dean. Half of everything we own is mine. Actually, you might want to check the prenuptial agreement you signed. The one your lawyer assured you was just a formality." Her expression changed. "What are you talking about?" Page 7, Section 3. In the event of adultery, The offending party forfeits all claims to marital assets. Your boyfriend isn't the only one who can afford good legal advice. She grabbed the desk chair for support. You can't prove adultery. I have photos, audio recordings, witness statements, and hotel receipts. Plus, your friend Jennifer has been very cooperative lately. Jennifer? What does she have to do with this? She's the one who's been feeding me information for the past month. Turns out she was getting tired of covering for your lies. Amazing how quickly people change sides when they realize they're backing a losing horse. Talia sank back into the chair. Why are you doing this? We could work things out, go to counseling, start over. Start over? With someone who tried to steal my life's work while planning to leave me for her boss? I don't think so. I never said I was leaving you. You didn't have to. The apartment lease Jennifer helped you sign downtown says it all. Move-in date was supposed to be January 1st, wasn't it? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. You can stay with Jennifer, or in that apartment you've already paid for, or in your car. I don't care, but you're not staying here. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, everyone in town wakes up to find copies of your personal emails in their mailboxes, the ones where you laugh about your boring husband and make plans to upgrade your situation. Should make for interesting breakfast conversation. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll need time to pack. You have 2 hours. She left the study without another word. I could hear her moving around upstairs, opening drawers and closets. The sounds of a marriage ending, one suitcase at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from Maddie. Heard about the warehouse meeting. You okay? Fine, I typed back. Better than fine. Good. Because half the town's talking about what happened at the board meeting today. The other half's talking about Talia's little scene in the parking garage. Girl's got no friends left. What about Rhett? Word is he's been making calls all afternoon, trying to find someone willing to back him in a fight against you. No takers so far. Turns out, people don't like betting against the guy who controls their paychecks. I smiled. Sometimes small towns worked exactly the way they were supposed to. Upstairs, I could hear Talia crying as she packed. Not the dramatic sobbing of someone seeking sympathy, but the quiet, desperate tears of someone who'd finally realized the game was over. 2 hours later, she stood in the foyer with 3 suitcases and a box of personal items. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her choices. This isn't who you are, Dean. You're not cruel. You're right. I'm not cruel. I'm thorough. There's a difference. She walked to the door, then turned back. What if I fight this? What if I hire lawyers, contest the prenup, make this public? Then you'll discover just how thorough I can be. Your choice. She left without another word. I watched from the window as she loaded her car and drove away, taillights disappearing into the December darkness. The house felt different now. Quieter, but not empty. Clean, like after a long illness finally breaks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning, but I arrived at Northpoint headquarters 2 hours early. The building felt different now that it was truly mine, not just a place I worked, but something I controlled. Every security camera, every access point, every server room responded to my commands. Soren was waiting in the executive conference room with coffee and the morning newspapers. 3 of them had picked up yesterday's story, though the details were still sketchy. Local tech executive assumes control of major employer was the most accurate headline. Corporate coup shakes small Maine town was the most dramatic. Any word from our former CEO? I asked. Rhett's been calling board members all night, trying to drum up support for some kind of counter-move. No luck. Turns out when people have to choose between their mortgages and their loyalty, mortgages win every time. What about Talia? She's been busy too. Jennifer says she spent most of the night trying to find a lawyer willing to take her case, Apparently, the prenup is more ironclad than she thought. I reviewed the documents spread across the conference table. Financial reports, personnel files, legal opinions, everything I needed to make this transition official and irreversible. In 2 hours, I would stand before the local media and announce the new direction for Northpoint Industries. By evening, everyone in town would understand exactly how the power structure had shifted. "There's something else," Soren said, his tone more serious. "Talia tried to access the building this morning. Security turned her away, but she made quite a scene, started shouting about illegal lockouts and stolen property." "How many people saw it?" "Enough. Someone recorded it on their phone. It's already making the rounds on social media." I pulled out my tablet and found the video. Talia stood in the lobby, gesturing wildly at the security guards, while other employees watched from a safe distance. Her voice was shrill, desperate. "This is my workplace. You can't keep me out. I have rights." The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m. She'd been there for over an hour, making increasingly frantic demands. By the end of the video, she was threatening to call the police, the labor board, and anyone else who might listen to her complaints. "She's unraveling," Soren observed. "Good. Makes the next part easier." At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked into the main conference room. Local reporters filled the front rows, followed by employees, board members, and various town officials. Mayor Davidson sat in the second row, looking nervous. The bank presidents were there, along with the heads of the Chamber of Commerce and the Tourism Board. Anyone who mattered in our small community had shown up to witness this moment. Rhett was conspicuously absent, though I noticed his wife Margaret in the back row, her face carefully neutral. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I know there's been a lot of speculation about recent changes at Northpoint Industries, so I wanted to address those directly." I outlined the share transfer, the new ownership structure, and the management changes. Clinical, factual, boring, exactly what the situation required. No drama, no personal attacks, just business. "What about the allegations regarding former management?" asked Rebecca Chen from the local newspaper. "All personnel matters are being handled through appropriate channels. I can say that we've discovered several violations of company policy that required immediate action." "Can you be more specific?" "Misuse of company resources, conflicts of interest, and violations of our ethics policies. The details are confidential, but I can assure you that all decisions were made based on documented evidence." A hand went up in the middle of the room. Jennifer Walsh, Talia's former best friend, looked nervous but determined. "What about the employees who were terminated? Will they have any recourse?" "All terminations were conducted according to their employment contracts and state law. Anyone who believes they were wrongfully dismissed is free to pursue legal remedies." More questions followed, most of them predictable. I answered each one calmly, professionally, giving the reporters enough information to write their stories without providing ammunition for future lawsuits. The conference was winding down when the main doors burst open. Talia strode in, flanked by a man in an expensive suit who was clearly her attorney. She looked haggard but determined, her usual composure replaced by desperate energy. "I demand the right to respond to these accusations," she announced, her voice carrying across the room. The reporters perked up immediately. This was the drama they'd been hoping for. "Ma'am, this is a private corporate event," I said calmly. "If you have concerns, you can address them through proper legal channels." "Proper channels? You've destroyed my career based on lies and fabricated evidence." Her lawyer tried to pull her back, whispering urgently in her ear. She shook him off and stepped closer to the podium. "This man," she pointed at me, "has conducted a personal vendetta disguised as corporate governance. He's violated privacy laws, manipulated financial records, and engaged in harassment and intimidation." "Those are serious allegations," I replied. "Do you have evidence to support them?" I have evidence that you've been spying on employees, recording private conversations, and using company resources to conduct personal investigations." The room was completely silent now. Every phone was recording, every reporter taking notes. This was exactly what I'd hoped would happen. "Actually," I said, pulling out a folder, "let me address those claims directly." I opened the folder and removed a photograph. It showed Talia and Rhett entering the Riverside Inn together, timestamp clearly visible. This photograph was taken by a private investigator hired by the company to investigate suspected misuse of corporate resources. The investigation was authorized by the board and conducted according to all applicable laws. I placed another document on the podium. This is a report detailing 17 instances of company credit cards being used for personal expenses, including hotel rooms, restaurant meals, and travel that had no legitimate business purpose. Talia's face went white. Her lawyer was now actively trying to pull her toward the exit. "And this," I continued, holding up a final document, "is a signed affidavit from an employee who witnessed multiple violations of company policy, including the sharing of confidential information with unauthorized personnel." Jennifer Walsh stood up in the audience. "I provided that affidavit," she said clearly. "Everything in it is true." The betrayal hit Talia like a physical blow. She staggered backward, staring at her former friend with shock and rage. How could you?" "Because I was tired of covering for your lies," Jennifer replied. "Tired of being part of your schemes. Some of us actually care about our jobs and our reputations." "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I think we've covered everything that needs to be addressed publicly. Thank you for your time." The reporters surged forward, but I was already walking toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Talia arguing with her lawyer, her voice rising to near hysteria as she realized how completely she'd been outmaneuvered. I made it to the parking garage before she caught up with me. "This isn't over," she said, her voice hoarse from shouting. "I'll fight this. I'll expose what you've done." "What exactly have I done? Protected my company from employees who were stealing from it? Enforced policies that were already in place? Followed legal procedures to address misconduct? You've destroyed my life." "No, Talia, you did that yourself. I just made sure everyone else could see it." She pulled out her phone and started recording. "I want this on the record. Dean Callix has conducted a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation against me because I tried to leave him. Actually, the record shows that you were terminated for cause after a thorough investigation revealed multiple policy violations. The fact that you were planning to leave your husband is irrelevant to your employment status. People will see through this. They'll understand what really happened." I looked around the parking garage. Several employees were watching from a distance, drawn by the commotion. Their faces showed curiosity, but not sympathy. Talia had burned too many bridges, made too many enemies. "You're right," I said. "People will understand exactly what happened. They'll understand that actions have consequences, that loyalty matters, and that nobody is above accountability." Her phone was still recording as she backed toward her car. "This is who you really are, Dean. Vindictive, controlling, pathetic. Everyone will see it. Let them. I'm comfortable with who I am." She got in her car and drove away, tires squealing on the concrete. I watched until she disappeared around the corner, then headed back inside. Soren was waiting by the elevators with a satisfied smile. "Well, that went better than expected. Phase 1 is complete. Time for Phase 2. Which is? Making sure she understands that leaving town is her best option." We rode the elevator to the top floor, to the executive suite that was now officially mine. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the entire town spread out below, the houses where people were probably already discussing what they'd witnessed, the businesses that depended on Northpoint for their survival, the network of relationships and dependencies that made small-town life both comfortable and dangerous. Talia would learn that lesson soon enough. In a place like this, reputation was everything, and hers was now beyond repair. She could fight, she could hire lawyers, she could make threats and accusations, but she couldn't change the fundamental truth. She had betrayed the trust of everyone who mattered, and there was no coming back from that. My phone buzzed with a text from Maddie. Saw the news conference on Facebook Live. Impressive work, brother. Drinks on the house tonight. I smiled and typed back, save me a seat at the bar. We have a lot to celebrate. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, the first real storm of winter. By morning, it would cover the town in pristine white, hiding all the ugliness underneath. But the ugliness would still be there, waiting for spring to reveal it again. Some things never changed in small towns, but sometimes, if you were patient and thorough and willing to play the long game, you could change who was in control when the snow melted, and that made all the difference.